Okay, so today we're going to look at types and components of the computer system. So let's learn about hardware and software. So what is hardware? Hardware means it is the physical parts of the computer system or the physical components of the computer system, which means things you can physically touch are called hardware in ICT. Software means it is like instructions, programs, intelligence of the computer system. There are actually two types of computer software, as you'll see, which is called the system software, and the other one is known as the application software. Now let's talk about the internal memories, which is called as RAM and ROM. RAM is known as random access memory, so it means that it is a temporary memory device, which means the device which holds this memory is gonna store it temporarily. When you shut your computer down, the data you have entered will be lost. So in ICT, we call this as volatile memory. Either of those you mention in the exam, you get a mark for that. A RAM can be written to and read from, so you can alter the text editings. If you want to edit anything or alter any settings, it is possible. It stores data in files, programs, part of the operating systems which is currently in use. It can increase in size to improve operational speed of the computer. ROM is actually the total opposite. It is a permanent memory device. So it permanently stores data even when your computer is turned off, the data is not lost at all, never. So we say non-volatile memory device. But the thing here is that you can only read the data. You cannot alter any data that's stored. It uses a BIOS system to store data and other data to start up. Then we have something called internal storage devices. Now, because RAM and ROM are internal memory, they don't have the capability of storing any data permanently. So we have to use something called backing storage devices, which can store your data and it will never be lost. Data is permanently stored, it is non volatile. There are two things we use, which is called HDD and SSD, hard disk drive and solid state drive. Now, solid state drive is much more of improved and quicker, faster version of hard disk drive. So we use solid state drive instead. Have a look after pausing the video on the differences between them. Now let's move on to the next slide. Now let's look at input and output devices. Now input devices means it is the hardware that will allow the data to be entered into the computer. There are two ways of entering data into the computer. One is manually or either direct data entry. Direct data entry means completely it is automatically being done for you. Manually means it's either typed by a keyboard or a mouse, whereas in direct data entry it could be OMR or OCR. But some devices can actually act as both input and output device, like DVDs or touchscreens. Pause the video and have a look at the differences and all of that for input and output devices. Let's proceed. Now we have something called user interfaces. Now there are two types I'm going to mention here, which is command line interface, CLI, and GUI, which is graphical user interface. Command line interface is actually that the computer which you're trying to alter the settings of is actually you are in direct communication with it. So you are in direct communication with the computer. You can make any changes you want to the settings of the computer. Okay, in graphical user interface you don't need to learn any commands. It's more of a user friendly interface where you're going to use icons to represent applications. You use a pointing device such as a mouse, which is used to click on an icon to launch the application. So it's way more simpler than just typing in commands. The disadvantage of command line interface is that you will have to learn loads of commands to carry out just simple basic operations. So because you're learning commands and you're going to type them in, it's gonna be error prone. That means you can um, cause an error or you can cause mistakes while doing that. So each command has to be written in the correct formatting and spelling and so on. Okay. Whereas disadvantages for graphical user interface is that it's taking more memory than CLI interface, and the user is limited to icons provided on the screen. You're not limited to the icons provided on your screen in command line interface. I needed a much more complex operating system such as Windows to operate, which can be slower to execute commands. So it's more of um, a complex operating system. So let's summarize what we have gone through in the whole video. We have gone through the hardware and software. There are two types of software: application and system software, which we will be looking at in another part of this video, second part, which I will be doing. And then hardware, which is the physical components of the computer system. Then we have looked at the internal memories, RAM and ROM, their disadvantages, their comparisons, and then the internal memory and backing storage comparison, and what internal storage devices are and how are they used. Then we've looked at input and output devices. What do they mean? How do they work? And what are the comparisons? Then we have looked at the user interfaces, CLI and GUI. That's all, and thank you for watching.